Greetings and God bless you. This is Sam Smith with this week's Wednesday Rule with God episode, and my second week back home. And I like to do some introductions. I have two dogs, and some other family, but I have two dogs. I have a female Maltese. Her name's Tara. This is Tara. Tara Lynn. Say hi, Tara. Okay, she's not in the mood. And this is Elmo. He's a Bichon Poodle. And here's Elmy. So he likes the camera. And so they kind of gave me an idea of how they're my companions. I was gone for a year and I really missed my dogs. And sometimes you get lonely when you're alone, obviously. And there's two ideas I'm kind of playing with this episode. One is kind of our thought processes and how we kind of tell ourselves things, or how we react towards things. And so a particular verse I was looking at is 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, and in the King James Version it says, well, we'll start in verse 3 of 2 Corinthians chapter 10. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, they're not fleshly, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. So they're spiritual weapons. To the casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. And then that second part of verse 5, in the Weymouth New Testament translation, it says, and we carry off every thought as if into slavery, into subjection to Christ. So every thought we have, every single thought, should be held into the obedience of Christ. Like, would Jesus be thinking it? For what he did, we got to have a relationship with God because of what Jesus Christ did. And he was obedient to every jot and tittle of the law, and he did everything that God told him to do. And so, if he was thinking, if Savior thinking a thought, and if Jesus would have thought that or did that, would he have been doing the perfect will of God? And sometimes it's yes, and a lot of times it's no. Like when you get envious or jealous, or commit adultery, or fornication, or you're committing idolatry, where you worship something that's not God. All these things you could be thinking about, and then just different thoughts. And it's a thought. It's something I'm playing with a little bit, and it goes into this other verse. Breaking down the strongholds, the first part of verse 5. Verse 4. Yeah. But mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. So what are strongholds? And those are obviously, not obvious. They're these things in our head that discourage us, or make us not feel like, make us feel like we're not loved by God, or making us feel like someone doesn't like us, or whatever. And they're just things we sometimes tell ourselves, or something that happened in the past that makes us think that. And so I think of this verse, Isaiah chapter 54, and verse, I think 17. Yes, verse 17. No weapon that is formed against thee, so you, shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn, meaning thou shalt condemn. Thou shalt say, you're wrong. You'll say, that's not true. And the rest of that verse says, this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and the righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. So God says, nothing, that's everything, formed against you shall prosper. So, people, and this can be taken literally or figuratively. Someone holds a gun on you. You tell yourself this, and you believe God to get you out of this situation in whatever way. And figuratively, people, saying things that aren't kind, saying things that aren't loving, or just situations God can get you out of all of them. No weapon against thee shall prosper. And so, I think of this, I want to bring over the dogs again with this companion thing. Because a lot of times when we're alone, we can tell ourselves things that because we're alone, like I'm alone because no one likes me. I'm alone because I hate people. I'm alone because I'm not worthy of friendship, or whatever. There's a lot of things that people can tell themselves that aren't true, that makes them feel like they should be alone. And I was alone a lot, but I still knew that God was with me all the time, and God is with you all the time. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we forget that God's uh, around a lot of times. And now I'm not lonely at all because I got my dogs here, and they're kind of they keep me company, and they can they sometimes remind you that you're not alone, because they don't have a spirit, they're just animals. And it's an interesting thought, how we just kind of get into a solitary mindset sometimes and think that we're alone. But the main point of this is kind of a homework assignment, I guess. Not really a homework assignment, but if you want to, get like a list of like verses that are like defense verses, like 2 Corinthians 10:5 or Isaiah 54:17, and there's a lot of verses. They're all kind of going through my head, and 2 Timothy 1:7, and that one, there's a verse in John about um, perfect love, and how it's just, there's so many verses that you can get that you just want to meditate on them. And that's part of casting down, holding every thought captive into the obedience of Christ in 2 Corinthians 10:5. You meditate verses in your head that help you fight against those strongholds. And, you go through these verses, and when you believe that the word is the will of God, which it is, God had it written, God's telling you these things, and these are promises that you claim, and they'll help you, fight that solitary state you might be in. That'll help you fight against people saying things. That'll help you fight against the weapons of the adversary. It'll help you fight the adversary, and it'll help you feel better, and it'll remind you that God's there all the time. So that's what I have for you today. I'm still playing with those thoughts. Maybe I'll talk about them next week a little bit. Because they're definitely a big idea. The idea is big, but I wanted to kind of bring the practical of, think of God like your dog. Ha ha ha. So dog backwards is God. Ha. And I just thought of that. So take this all with a grain of salt, because I'm not perfect. So maybe some things don't click right away, but just think about it and pray about it. And I'll be seeing you guys next week, hopefully, on Wednesday. And love you guys. God bless.